All gave some gave all. Some would march on, others would fall. There are no winners in war when you consider the cost. You cannot justify the thousands of lives for our own that were lost. Wars leave scars that in time may fade, but not without taking a toll. However, the deepest wounds are those that scar the very heart and soul. For those that saw action during wartime, I'm sure without a doubt, they've had to live with the memories of fallen comrades, their brothers, someone they cared deeply about. And all the families left behind with only their memories to carry them through, also paying the price of freedom won for me and you. We are all aware that times have changed, and yet there are certain things we must never forget. Be proud of our flag, and long may she wave, and long may we remember what so many gave.
Hi, I'm Daryl Tureen. I was living on a ranch west of Petersburg when I enlisted in the Marines in May of 1966. I just turned 19 years old in April. I enlisted for 4 years active and 2 years reserve. I only served 3 years active and 3 years reserve. I went to boot camp at MCRD San Diego, Camp Pendleton, California, and had additional training at Camp Pendleton. After training, I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, until I received orders to Vietnam. I was in Vietnam from June of 1967 until July of 1968. And when I returned, I was stationed at Camp Pendleton until I was discharged from active duty in September of 1969. The motivation to join the service was because of the way I was raised, and service to our country was a part of that. I have family that was killed in action in World War II and was a POW in Korea. Boot camp could be physically and mentally challenging. Physically, if you weren't in good shape, and mentally on everyone, because they really stressed you out. If you weren't able to take the stress of boot camp, you probably weren't going to be able to take the stress of combat. There were many humorous times while I served in the service, and most of them I probably can't share on this broadcast. But one of them was when I was still in basic training, the drill instructors had what they called a house mouse who cleaned their duty hut. And one day, our senior drill instructor was walking in the duty hut just as the house mouse killed a fly. The drill instructor went berserk. That was his pet fly. So the whole platoon was brought into formation, and we held a ceremony for a funeral. We buried this fly in the dirt. A few days later, the drill instructor decided that he was missing his pet fly. So he told the house mouse to dig it up. He wanted to see it. Of course, the house mouse could not find it. So he went and killed another fly. And when he took it to the drill instructor looked at it and said, "This isn't my pet fly. My pet fly was a boy fly, and this is a girl fly." Needless to say, we spent the next hour doing calisthenics, push-ups, squat thrusts, jumping jacks, while the drill instructor warmed his fly. I had 3 people that really influenced me the most while I was in the service, and the first one was that drill instructor. The second one was the warrant officer who was in charge of my detachment while I was in Vietnam. And the third one was my commanding officer of the unit I was in after I returned from Vietnam. All 3 of them were outstanding leaders and Marines, And I was a better Marine and person because of them. I guess one of the more disappointing moments was when I returned back to the U.S. I was aware of the demonstrations against the war, but I guess I wasn't prepared for the hatred or dislike for the military themselves.
My name is Don Carter. I was in the United States Navy Seabees. I joined in 1966 when I was a junior in high school. And when I graduated in I take that back, I graduated in 66 and I left after I graduated. First place I went was to San Diego for boot camp. From there, I went up the coast a ways to Port Hueneme, where I took heavy equipment operating school. We ran everything from scrapers, cranes, dozers, graders, all the heavy equipment that the government had. From there, I went to Davisville, Rhode Island, where they were building a battalion specifically to go to Vietnam. While I was there, we went to Camp Lejeune for some survival and combat training. Then it was back to Davisville, and we left for Vietnam soon after the first of 1967. I was in Vietnam then at Chu Lai for 10 months, where we worked on runways, heliports, roads, and just to build out Chu Lai. It ended up being a huge base down there. We came back to the States for leave, went back to Camp Lejeune for more training, and then back to Davisville, and then back to Vietnam. My second tour in Vietnam, I was detached to some Marines where we went to different spots. We went to Tam Key first. It had just been overrun. There was an orphanage there that the United States had built. And while we was there, we found a young boy out in the jungle, and he had run away from that orphanage because he heard the Kong were coming, and he was the age of the boys that they would take. He was about 10 or 11. And we brought him into our camp, and we kept him there for 4 or 5 months. We got in lots of trouble with it because we weren't supposed to do anything like that. And we got caught having him there because we ordered some vaccinations for him. And the medics got to wondering why we needed these vaccinations for a kid. But anyway, our lieutenant there ended up getting that little boy back home, back in the United States. He adopted him. I found that out after we got back to the States. And that made the whole thing worth it, because that little boy prepared me for what I was going to see the next few months. And I had to have a reason for doing it, and that little boy was going to be the reason. Came back to the States. I had the same experience as about every other Vietnam veteran did. We landed in a place called Quonset Point, Rhode Island, and we had to get on a bus and ride it 40 or 50 miles to Davisville, where the CB base was. That whole 40 or 50 miles was lined with people, throwing rocks, throwing everything at you. The best part of coming back from Vietnam was finding my little sister waiting for me at the Omaha airport. and there wasn't a demonstrator in sight there. I walked into that place and was treated like a serviceman coming home. And that made me realize what a great part of the country I live in. The people that influenced me most was the little boy and the friends that I was with. We built a bond through 2 tours that lasted us, well, their whole lifetime, because they've all died. I'm the lone survivor of 5 of us that did 2 tours together.
Okay, my name is Fred Kepler. I live in Elgin, Nebraska now, but I have to go back quite a few years to remember what happened. I was 17 when I got out of high school in 1950. And I left home when I was 18, 15th of October 1950. And went to California, and I had a job, and the job was seasonal. So it phased out, and I knew I was going to have bills and no income. So I went down to the recruiting office, and I asked them to let me enlist in the Air Force. Well, there was a 3-month waiting period. And I thought, well, my bills are not going to be paid 3 months while they're waiting on me. So I asked about the Navy. It was 2 months waiting time there. And finally I said, what do you got left? And he said, we got the Army. And I said, give me a chunk of that. Signed up for the Army, 3-year term. And they put me in the infantry. 14 weeks infantry training. The first thing he did when he had us in formation, he scraped up a bunch of dirt with his foot and held it up. And he said, see this? Yes, sir. He said, that's worth more than all you SBs put together. That's get you the feeling right. Anyway, we fired the M1s, the 50 caliber machine guns, the 30 caliber machine guns, the bazooka, the mortars. In fact, we was taught how to shoot everything possible to do damage. Anyway, we graduated from there. That was in Camp Roberts, California. I think I got a 10-day delay en route, went home to see my dad, and then had to report at Camp Stolman, California. And they put us on a ship, and the band played So Long, It's Been Nice to Know You. We climbed up on the bridge on the ship. 14 days later, we wound up in Yokohama, Japan. They processed us for 36 hours, no sleep, took away our uniforms, everything we had. Even the shaving kits, they said, where you're going, you're not going to need it. They give us fatigues. And when it came time to get footwear, well, the big old fat sergeant, he slapped 2 boots up on the counter, and I looked at him, I said, I don't want these. Well, first he asked what size, and I said 7s. And he slapped them on the counter, and I checked them, and they were 9s. He said, oh, hell, your feet will grow into them. So he gave me 2 pair of socks, big deal. And so we went on another ship. We went 3 days down around the southern tip of Japan, around, and landed at Incheon. And those poor people coming out of North Korea, it wasn't a pretty sight, I tell you. Them people had everything they owned on their back coming out of North Korea to get away from the Chinese. And their huts, their houses they lived in were just shacks made with rice straw out of the fields, and they were patched together with waste from the cattle. It was terrible. The whole island smelled like dead fish. And then they had rice paddies that were beyond reproach. Here I had to tramp through them damn rice paddies with floppy boots. The clothing they gave us was fatigues, summer clothing, and it got to be 39 below zero in the mountains, and I lost my hearing, froze my feet, and anyway, I got through it, and I made some friends, but lost them. You don't make too many friends in wartime because it's too heartbreaking when you lose them. I don't know what to say. I got out when I was 21. I had a 3-year term. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it.
I'm Kate Connolly, and I was living in Portland, Oregon when I decided to join the Navy. I had 2 kids to support, and jobs weren't that plentiful, so the military offers an option. But anyway, to get back to this, I live in Spalding, Nebraska now, and I really enjoyed the military. I married while I was stationed at NAS Moffett Field, that's in California, and my husband is a military man also, which makes it great. I mean, then you understand each other's jobs. But we were stationed at Moffett Field for a year, and then went to Neligh, Japan. That's an Air Force base, but the Navy runs the airfield and the airplanes and the hangars and everything. The Navy runs that. So we enjoyed 3 years in Japan. And then coming back to the States, we had another son by then, so that gave us 4 kids. But we transferred to Naval Air Station Lemoore, California, and that's at Lemoore, California. I got out then in '82. My husband had retired, and he got retired on April 30th, '82, and I got out November 30th of '82. And we moved up to Oregon then, where I was from, and spent 20 years there on a little mini farm. But we got involved with the American Legion, and I didn't know it at the time, but I signed up as adjutant for the American Legion, and that meant running the bar also. That American Legion was a club. So I ran the club. And then 17 years ago, we moved to Nebraska, to Spalding, and guess what? They have an American Legion in Spalding. Guess who gets to be the adjutant there? At least it's not a club. It's just a regular American Legion meeting hall. But if you're the adjutant, you basically run the American Legion. So, yeah, I would do it again.
My name is Rick Schindler. I live here in Neligh, Nebraska. In 1967, I enlisted in the Air Force because I wanted to fly. And I wasn't college educated, so I knew I'd have to be a crew member. But they did give me a school to go to for a loadmaster. The problem was I flunked the flying physical when I was in boot camp. So the next thing that happened, I had orders to a place called Port Hueneme, California. And my DI, he didn't even know where that was at. We had to find out from somebody, and it was the Naval CB base. And they sent us there to learn construction equipment operation because the Air Force wanted bases built and there weren't enough CBs or Army engineers, so they decided to have their own, and they called it Red Horse. I spent a whole winter in 67, 68 in California going to the school down there. And then I went to Florida to Eglin Military Reservation for more schooling. This time it was with the Army. And then they flew us directly to Vietnam, Phan Rang, Vietnam. And worked there for a year, building that base, making runways, revetments, whatever, roads. I was equipment operator, you had to do it all. The thing I remember most is how hot it was and how dirty it was. It was like working in red baby powder. That's how it was every day. The most exciting thing that happened there is, well, of course, we'd be harassed by the enemy. There'd be mortars at night and rockets during the daytime. And I did know a couple guys that didn't make it. They got killed with rockets during the day. It was just a bad luck. If you were out walking around, one of them landed next to you. But I never lost any friends. We spent most of the year working, building that base. And one day we went to get our duty assignments. And our boss said, boys, we're done. We're not moving another spoonful of dirt in this place. He says, I need people to volunteer to drive trucks. We got to bring guys home from outlying duty stations. So for my last 2 months in Vietnam, we hauled all of our people and equipment home from Bam Ban Tui, which is up next to the Cambodian border. And that was quite an adventure to drive those roads during monsoon. But after that, we shipped home, and I had time left to go in the military. So they put me in Marquette, Michigan, K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base. I went from 110 degrees to 50 below zero in the wintertime. And that was they put me in a fire department because they didn't need as equipment operator stateside. And that was the worst part of my whole military experience, is serving in a fire department when it's 20 foot of snow on the ground outside. Otherwise than that, I met some really good people. For some reason, our organization in Vietnam had a lot of college-educated people in it, and being around those people rubs off on you. And I was always impressed how they handled things a little easier than the rest of us did, and they could see through a few of the dumb things we did. But it instilled in me the route to go to school. And because of that experience, I went to school and I got my college education afterwards. So I'll always appreciate the military for that. Otherwise than that, I would tell any young man to go to the military. It's good for you. You learn how to fold your socks, keep your mouth shut, and make your bed.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Wells, and I was living in Oakley, Kansas when I enlisted in the United States Navy back in 1977. I was in the service for 20 years, and I served in various locations. I served during Lebanon, the invasion of Grenada, Operation Earnest Will, invasion of Panama, Desert Storm, and the Persian Gulf. I served on land bases in the United States and overseas. I also served on board ship. I now live in Boone, Nebraska. My biggest challenge in the service was leaving and losing out on the precious moments of my children growing up. I was a single parent, raising 3 children, and that, you could say, would be my biggest regret, not being able to see them grow up into the mature, responsible adults that they are today. They grew up with good and bad situations, and some I was unable to guide them through being in the military. When I graduated from high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. My parents encouraged me to follow my 2 older sisters and join the Navy. I did not want to go to college. I did not want to get married. So I went to Denver, Colorado for the exam and physical, and then I sat down with a counselor to discuss what type of job I was qualified for. I said, "What do you mean, the Coast Guard?" That was a branch of service my father was in, And that was what they were trying to get me to go into. And I wanted to go into the Navy. So finally, I signed up and became a radioman in the Navy. And I left for boot camp a couple of months later. I feel the military is a male-orientated organization. And along with many of my counterpoints, the sexual harassment that goes on in the military, you just never reported it. And it's sad because if you reported anything, you were automatically labeled. It's downright bullying is what it is. This situation comes up in all communities today. It does not happen in just the military. How do we change it? Well, we have to prepare our women, along with the men, that when they go into the service, that they need to be better educated and better informed individuals. I do not regret being in the military. It's made me a stronger person. I feel I have more empathy. I do not see color. It has given me a strong work ethic. I developed some lasting lifetime memories, good and bad, many friends from all over the world, a camaraderie that will never be broken, and has done so much for me. I'm proud to say that I served my country.
And on closing, I just want to convey our appreciation and thank you for joining us today. Thank you, veterans, and to those who shared their stories and for standing up for Old Glory. We all know freedom isn't free. There's a huge price paid for all our liberties. God bless America, land of our birth, and God bless America, the greatest nation on earth.